would like to know more about custom brushes, so that's what I decided to focus on for this one. Um, I'm going to run through a few brushes and how to make custom brushes. So the first thing, um, oh, that's not good. I'm live streaming to myself. I better close that. Alright, so first of all, I grabbed a whole bunch of brushes from other people on the internet, which you can find. And that's not a bad way to do it, because it takes a lot of tweaking and stuff to get a custom brush to feel just right. And if someone gets one that feels really good, don't feel like you're stealing. If they put it up there for you to use and download, go ahead and do so. And you can go in and see what settings they have on it. But it'll help you get different kinds of feels and looks to the brushes real quickly. Yeah.
The brushes are ABR files, right?
That is the Adobe format, yes.
So when you say you got other people's brushes, are you saying you download their ABR files, tuck it into a directory?
Uh-huh.
Can you merge like ABR files, or can you import
That's
multiple ABR files?
that's a good question. And that I guess would be a good place to start. I wasn't planning on doing that right away, but it's probably a good thing. So, Preset Manager is where you can go to manage all your brushes. You can also do a bunch from the brush menu over here in the corner. You've got all these different options. These are the Adobe default libraries that they have.
Each of those correspond to a single ABR file?
I believe they are a single ABR file, yes. And if you put your brushes in a certain location, they'll actually show up here as well. I don't really bother with that, so I'm not sure exactly what the location is for that. You can also get to the preset manager from here. But if you see here, you have reset brushes, which resets into the defaults, the default brushes and the default settings. Then load brushes, save brushes, and replace brushes. So when you load brushes, it'll actually ask you, oh, never mind. I thought it did. Okay, if you hit replace brushes, it should replace all your brushes with the new set that you chose. It really should have asked when I went to load. Maybe maybe it doesn't do that anymore.
Are you in CS6 here?
Oh, that's a good question. This is actually CS4. Maybe no. It should ask. I don't know why it's not. Maybe it's because it's the same AVR file that I'm actually loading. But let's try like this one. Okay, so if I go to a new library, it'll ask me this. Replace current brushes with the brushes from basic brushes. So that will get rid of all the things you have in there and replace all of them. Or you can append and I'll just tack everything on the end. I've been trying to clean up my brush library, so I try to have as few brushes as I think I need.
How many
So,
brushes do you actually sort of keep and use regularly in the course of your production?
well, it varies on what I'm doing, but if I'm doing a landscape painting, I can go through a bunch. If it's just a drawing, like a couple. So I keep a whole bunch here for a bunch of different purposes. Ones that I find that I go back to, and I've been trimming down the list, but this is about where I'm at right now. Um, let's go back to the preset manager. It lets you do all those things but from here you can actually shift click and I'll select all of them, or you can select just like a few of them, or you can control click and select certain ones, and then you can save out a set, and you can also load brushes into here. So from here you can also delete brushes that you don't want and kind of clean out.
So if you click low, will you get the same OK, cancel, append dialog?
Yeah, you
Okay,
should.
so it's the same thing, different location.
No, it's just gonna add it on there instead of append, or it's just gonna automatically append.
I was trying to create a new brush palette,
A new brush palette. So I'm gonna repeat stuff just so it gets on the video.
Sure. And so I was trying to create a new one because I wanted to just start fresh because I was trying to build a brush library.
So you wanted to clear out all your brushes.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be completely empty.
Uh-huh.
And from sort of like the mindset of just about every program you use, usually you load the program and then you go file new. And what I noticed was I wasn't able to figure out how to just say like new brush palette. It seemed like I had to start from an existing brush palette, get rid of all the brushes, and then start from there.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by brush palette, but it sounds like you mean brush set.
Yeah, brush set.
So you need a brush tip shape to have any kind of brush first. So right here I've deleted all my brushes. I'm going to say done.
That right there was exactly what I wanted.
So now I have no brushes.
Yeah, I just wanted a brush set that had no brushes. So
Oh,
that I
okay.
could start to add brush tips to it.
Yeah. Yep, so that's how you do it. You might be able to, yeah, so that's basically the way how you delete brushes, and that's what you would have needed to do to start from fresh.
You went to the preset manager, selected all, and selected delete.
I just deleted all of them, yep. Now I'm going to load back in my set. And I like to have the stroke thumbnail on just so I can see what I'm doing. And which one I'm picking, because some of them are the same shape. But I'm going to start first off with really simple ones. So I use a lot of like fully opaque brushes, and that means that there's no pressure sensitivity on for the opacity of the brush, but just the shape. And you can actually control the minimum diameter. This one feels a lot like a marker because it will never get like really thin. Let's do this on a new layer. And that's your basic brush, but that helps you get hard edges.
That's like calligraphic. It depends on the angle of the stroke, right?
Yep. You can go in here and
It's super
change.
thin, just not via pressure.
Right now I have it squished a little bit, and it's that chalk shape you can see right here. I have it squished, and I can change if I want it to get really thin. I can just go in and adjust that on the fly, or if I don't want it to change, it'll be constant there. Another fun thing to do is let's see. Okay, so this one is just a round brush, flat, or not flat, not soft. So it's a hard round brush, but I have both pen pressure set to the size, and under other is where you have the opacity jitter. So I have that set to pen pressure and flow jitter to pen pressure.
What's opacity jitter?
That's randomness. It's a procedural randomness. So this is actually a slider. So if I set this off and then use the slider, it randomizes the opacity, the jitter. It'll kind of go all over the place. I can also turn that on with the pen pressure on and add a little more variance. And that's some of the ways you can get a little bit more of like an ink feel.
Oh, I see. I'm supposed to be looking at your
Stroke thumbnail, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So you can get a little more variance in your stroke like that. For this one I have it off because I want it to be nice and smooth. Like that. So those are your basic ones. These are just ones with soft round shape. And that's something else you can actually adjust in here. If you have this one, a round one selected, you can change the hardness right here. So you don't have to make a new brush tip shape for that one, because it's just a procedurally calculated circle.
Isn't there a keyboard shortcut for hardness also?
You know what? I'm not sure if there is one by default. I never use it because I just have a hard and a soft. I don't typically adjust it.
Oh, so you just find yourself using either your hard brush?
Yeah, because I have a soft one here, hard one here, so I just kind of pick the one that I need.
Do you find it's easier to make brush presets like that rather than going in and adjusting the sizes and the hardness of them?
Well, for me, it's faster to do it this way because I can quickly just pick it rather than having to open the window and then go to the slider and then move the slider around. So when you're painting something, you'll kind of get into a groove and you won't really want to spend every time you spend that time like trying to set up the brush exactly how you want it. It takes you out of the painting, you know, for a little bit. So it depends on how you're working. Sometimes I'll do it.
Some of these look like they may be identical brushes of just differing sizes.
That can happen. I've gotten away from doing that just because of how many brushes you start to get when you start doing that.
Up and down to
Yeah, and it's kind of annoying to do that every time because it depends on what size you're working at. But I do have a large soft one because you want that a lot, and then I've got a small soft one. But other than that, most of these are just whatever size they were at when you saved the brush file. Well, that's a good thing to know too. So another way to use these, and I'll get into some of these fancier ones later, but another way to use these is to use it like a stamp tool. So in this one, for example, you can see the shape is just a leaf. But what I've gone and done, and this is actually might be one of the default brushes, but this is a really simple principle you can use when you want to apply some kind of texture or shape. If you turn on scatter, it actually moves it all over the place, and the count is set up right now, but the more you increase the count, the more number of stamps it's going to put down. And this is actually putting a variance on that as well, which you can set to a control if you like.
So really, when you make a stroke with a brush, you're laying down X number of samples per time increment.
Yeah.
And if it's a lot of samples, it looks like a smooth stroke.
Yep, and that's actually controlled right here by spacing. So if I went back to this round one, the spacing is actually set really low. The lower you set it, the more stamps it's going to do, so the more memory intense it is. So on complicated ones, you don't really want the spacing too low sometimes if it's too slow. So if I increase the spacing, you can see it just takes those stamps and spaces them out. But usually for a nice smooth stroke, you'll want it under 10. I have this one set at 5. But
And do you know offhand if it adjusts the spacing via a time clock, or is it via
no, it's
speed of your
distance.
stroke?
It's distance.
Okay.
It's not even speed of the stroke, it's just distance, pixel distance. So when I went to, let's see, which one was that again? This leaf brush, you can see that it has some spacing on to separate the leaves, which you can play with. And a lot of times if I'm using one like this, I end up playing with it to get exactly the right feel that I want for what I'm painting. You can set minimum diameter. You can actually set a roundness jitter, so it'll squish it randomly, so you'll get different shapes even though it's using the same shape. That helps cut down on the uniformity. Have minimum roundness is set on here, and really it's just kind of mess around with the slider and see what you want. But scattering is the big one to get everything, you know, separated out like that.
Can you do it here and toggle scattering on and off so I can see what your stroke looks like? Okay.
Yep. So I have both axes. If I didn't, it would scatter them just in Y, yeah. Now what you don't see is color, because I'm just using black, but let's set one to red, and then my background to, let's just do like an orangey yellow. And this actually has color dynamics on. So what this will do, oh, I guess it's not set that way. Sometimes I'll turn on foreground background jitter, which takes these two colors and blends between them. Right here it's got a hue jitter on, which does the blend or does the shifting. But if I turn on foreground background jitter, it'll go more towards the red. And if I start from the red, it'll be more red. This is a great one for leaves. This one's awesome for leaves and grass because you want that variance, and it just lays down crazy, you know, really easily procedurally generated randomness that that you can look for. And to be honest, I think purity has to do with the hue. I'm not really sure how this one works. There's so many controls in here that I really don't know all of them or how all of them work. I just know some of the ones that I use. So yeah, scattering, color dynamics. Other dynamics again is where you mess with opacity and flow jitter. I always have smoothing on. I think that's for, like, if you're doing, you can see it more when you're doing like a fast stroke. Like if I didn't have smoothing on this one, and I did a really fast stroke, you can see that interpolation there. And then if I turn it on, it should help fix that. Yeah. So
plotting vectors essentially?
yeah, it's almost like it's how many times it's sampling your stroke. And so if you go real fast, then it's not able to get all of that. So I always turn smoothing on, just force a habit.
What happens if you use the color dynamics on a non-stamped brush?
That's a good question. So the control right now is set off, so it should actually affect each stamp of the image of the So you can see it's the spacing is so close, but if we separate that out a little bit, you'll see it a little more. Each one, it has that dynamics applied to it. But I can turn it on to pen pressure, and then the harder I push, it still has that jitter on, so let's turn the jitter down or off.
Does it happen to have a mode where it's more tied to opacity? So the more opaque. So like if you have a very solid stroke, it might be red, and as you go to more opaque, or as you get more transparent, it becomes
Well,
yellow.
that would happen actually if you set
Getting that with your pen.
the pen pressure on to opacity as well. So
Well, could you switch to a brush that is
so this has pen pressure plus opacity. So it's harder to see, but it's more yellow here. It's just like this one, only it's more opaque where it's red, and then less transparent because this is also the least amount of pressure at the yellow side. That's two controls just using the same pen pressure control, or it's driven by pen pressure. So you can see like some of the brush tip shapes here. These are all pretty much just stamps, different shapes to get different feel. This one is a bunch of leaves that it has the scattering on, but as well you can throw on angle jitter. This one's set to direction, probably just to make it feel like, I don't know, it doesn't really matter actually because the angle jitter is so high. But this is a stamp, right? Just for leaves. With scattering. I'm not quite sure what the dual brush does for this one. I think it adds a little bit. I get frustrated with dual brush though, because sometimes it's hard to tell what it's using, but it looks like it's using this one.
What is a dual brush essentially?
It's a brush within another brush. This is one of the areas that I really don't understand as well. It's hard to see in certain instances, but if I have like, let's see, I think one of these brushes uses a dual brush. Is this one? Yeah. So if you turn off the dual brush, that is what is giving it all of its texture. Although you could use a tiled texture as well, but it's using this brush for the texture. Now what it does is it actually saves these brushes with your other brushes. So these ones aren't available in my normal brush set. It saved them because they were dual brush, part of another brush. So I'm not quite sure exactly how to work this area very well. This is probably my least familiar area. I just don't bother with it. If somebody has dual brush on, then I'll, you know, I'll leave it on, but I don't really know how to control it that well yet.
So I have a question. Are all your brushes just alpha images? I mean,
Yeah.
like the leaf brush you used, or this brush right here. Is there any way you can use a brush to stamp like an image? I'm sure there is.
Yes, there is.
I mean, if I'm getting ahead of what you were going to talk about anyway.
No, that's something that I guess I could have talked about when I was talking about stamping, but like I have this palm tree that, you know, I have the, you know, spacing set up so they're not, you know, on top of each other, but this is how you can grab, you see how many pixels it is? That's a pretty big image, and the more of these you have, the slower Photoshop is going to be, because every time you load it, or every time you open this brush window, it's going to load all this stuff. But for our department, we do have a bunch of libraries with a bunch of different silhouettes of trees, of whatever, that you can use as a stamp. And you can take, you know, a photo and make it into a stamp.
But I'm talking
Okay.
about working with something that is not a silhouette. Like
Something that's
that
not
has
a silhouette?
interior detail, and you're just basically stamping an image.
Well, whatever it is, it's going to convert it to black and white. So wherever there's white, it's going to be transparent. You can inverse that,
Like
obviously, but
populating a shoreline with fully rendered palm trees.
no. That's Painter does that.
What's that?
Painter does that. Photoshop doesn't do that.
TV paint.
Not that I know of. Maybe they're adding something, but it's only a single color applied to these.
There might be
Yeah.
a separate tool that does that though in Photoshop.
You
Brush actually does
Yeah, the brush does not. There might be another tool, but basically, what you're asking is if you can take basically a separate image file and stamping that along a stroke. I haven't used Photoshop for that. I'm not sure. They might have added something that you can do that in, but I know for sure Painter can do that, and Painter's got some actually really cool stuff that Photoshop should be pulling, but maybe they have a patent or something.
On the CS6, I recently purchased that for home, and it significantly improved a lot of what you can do with brushes and things when going to
Uh huh.
wet brushes now.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I haven't. And you can also have the hard edge or hard tip, sharpened tip, erode as you use it, which is really.
Real pencil.
It looks really cool. Yeah, and then you can sharpen it by just clicking sharpen.
You mean it dulls your pencil as you work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't used that yet, but it looks really cool.
They also
That
have this
seems
little,
something that's undesirable that they would have corrected in a digital product.
Well, yeah, they're just trying to hit that more, you know, simulation of traditional media, and I think that it looks really nice, and I've seen it used, and it looks pretty cool. I've played around with it a little bit, but haven't done that much with it.
Well, what's the difference between wet brushes, as you say in CS6, and the wet edges here? Is there? You showed me wet edges once, right? It looks like one.
So wet edges here it basically just adds a layer of opacity around the edge of your stroke.
So it chomps a lot of memory, right?
It can. Every time you lay a stroke, it's as if it was a watercolor, so when you lay the next one down, it's going to multiply on top of it. I don't know if it's actually multiply. It's darker. It'll show up. But wetting the brush in CS6 actually makes it so that it will pick up color from stuff that's underneath, right? It kind of mixes it as you paint.
yeah, it's totally badass.
It's pretty crazy.
Does it pull toward the edges over time, like if you were in a coat?
I don't know. I don't know about all those. I don't know about all those settings. I haven't really messed with them honestly. I, you know, I'm kind of like wary of any new brush stuff because whatever it is, it's going to be more memory intensive than anything that was previously. So I just don't want to slow Photoshop down. So I haven't messed with a lot of that stuff. So okay, we talked about stamping. I want to talk about some of these cool effects. Like you can see this brush tip shape is It's kind of weird. It's just got like splots on it, little splotchy things and little dots that are set off. But what it does is it's set to the shape dynamics. Angle jitter is set to pen pressure. So that means it's going to rotate depending on how hard I press, which means it's going to go all over the place. Because unless I maintain a perfectly even pressure, but if I'm going faster, it'll actually just kind of like go all over the place and make like different, you know, if I push all weird, it'll just like rotate all over the place, which is cool. I really like this brush because it has more of like a brush feel. Like it actually looks like a really dingy, stiff brush that that I'm dragging with ink or something.
I'm a little confused as to why that happens if angle jitter is set to 0%.
No, this is randomness. Think of this slider as randomness. Okay? But this is a control from the stylus. So this is...
So that's not a measure of amplitude.
Uh,
In other words, you have the effect you want, which is angle jitter, and what driving it, which is pen pressure.
right. Pen pressure controls the angle jitter.
Okay.
And this is randomness, basically.
Yeah, so what that would mean is if he had more randomness, if he had the exact same pressure, he would still get different angles, which probably is not what he wants because then you get an uncontrolled brush.
Right. So if I turned this off, it would just look like this all the time. Right?
Okay.
But since that's on pen pressure,
So are you saying now that then that by enabling shape dynamics, you automatically have to have size jitter, angle jitter, roundness jitter?
yes, but you can turn it all off. And then just use, you know, size jitter, whatever. You know,
Okay, I think I understand. Really, what those should say are angle jitter, randomness, roundness jitter, randomness.
yes, but this was made before, you know, there were, I don't know, maybe when it was just a mouse. If you have just a mouse input,
All right.
you can change this. But you can also set these to like direction, you know, so it'll change with your direction, it'll follow your direction. And one of my favorite drawing brushes is, it's weird because in the picture it's like this, but it's actually just this really long chisel shape, a line. So what I have it set to is initial direction for the angle. So since I started out going this way, it's going to stay pointed that way. But if I start out going like this, it's going to stay like that. So if I start out here and then without lifting up my mouse, I turn it, now it's really wide. Okay, but what that actually does is it gives me more of like a charcoal stick feel when I draw, because it has like a paper texture on it. Oh, looks like I didn't import any textures. But so it feels more like I'm drawing with like the side of a pencil or with charcoal. So yeah, this is a chalky brush, and like I showed you before, the dual brush is what's giving it the texture. But you could also do that with a paper texture. I think this might be one of the Photoshop default chalk brushes. I use this one a lot because it feels more traditional.
Did you go back to the sketch brush?
Yeah.
Or your drawing brush? And show the settings on there?
So basically, I have the size set to pen pressure, but this one has a texture on it which makes it really kind of grainy and soft. Down here, the angle jitter is set to initial direction. And now if you set it to direction, it will rotate with each stamp. And since it's long and thin, I don't want it to do that, because then you start to get this kind of thing. And if I wanted, well, let's see, initial direction. So roundness jitter, I have a little bit of jitter on that just to give it some more variance. Minimum roundness is up a little bit higher because I don't want it to get super thin. But what I can do is, a lot of times when I'm drawing, I'll want like a thinner line, but then I'll want some thicker areas, and I can just go in here and turn it the other way, and it's almost like I turn the stick on its side, and I get a nice flat thing to like render in areas, bigger, faster coverage, and really nice soft areas if I want. Okay. So this is another trick you can do with custom brushes. Is I made this little chain link piece, and then if I hold down Shift, it gives me a straight line. So I have it set to, you can see in the thumbnail that it's set to direction for the angle, and the size is pen pressure, so it'll actually change size. But I just have the spacing set so that it's perfectly like holds on to each other better. So that's just if, you know, I actually haven't used this that much, but it's just fun to do. This is one I use for bricks. So you can see it has scatter on. It's got color dynamics because it's shifting all these different values. It's actually, I think, and it really is just a square that's squished. So what I'll do is, if I'm actually painting in perspective, I'll come in here and cheat it and just angle it. It's not actually in perspective. That's one thing I wish Photoshop would do, is let you distort your shape, but they don't let you do that yet. What's another fun brush? So these bottom ones, yeah, I think from here down to here, I got from a concept artist named Shadi Safadi. I downloaded them, and they're pretty much all-inclusive of a lot of different things you'd want. And these are the only ones he uses when he's painting. This one is has a big, really nice grainy texture to it if you go real soft, but it'll also get like pretty opaque. And it does that through a texture and a dual brush. This one's really cool to draw with because it's hard on one side and soft on the other. So it feels more like you're drawing with a pencil or the side of a pencil. And you can get some nice light strokes, you know.
Now, all brushes are just a silhouette.
Right.
Is there, what is the cell of that brush? It's not grayscale, right? It's just grainy little dots that are making the...
Right. So I've saved, it's not grainy little dots, it's actually, why can't I preview JPEGs? It's actually that, and it's repeating itself like that. You see how it's it's got a texture on it that's giving it kind of that papery feel, but it's harder on the bottom and it's softer on the top. That's all it is, really. And it's just repeating itself with the spacing of 4.
I mean, it looks like there's a transparency on that.
Well, that's because it's
Pure
it's
silhouette.
It's a grayscale image, not.
so if I turn off all this
Brushes don't have
stuff,
to be purely black.
that is the, well, no, it is grayscale. It's how much black is in there. Yeah. And that's how you get soft edges on brushes.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
See, like, that is 100% just the brush tip shape at 100%. So you can see down here it's close. That might not be fully black, fully opaque, and this is like more transparent.
I guess that makes sense. Otherwise, how would you get a soft brush? So, okay.
Right.
Do you have a brush that you like to use for illustration?
It depends on what kind of look I'm going for, but I really do like to use this thing to draw out everything. It's just got a great feel for it, and I started, I started drawing. I was doing these sketches for NBA, or no, it was for a Madden thing, you know, designs for logo, and then I was using this brush, and I was just like, this feels awesome. I'm gonna just draw like this head right now, so because it feels like I'm drawing with a piece of on a piece of paper with a pencil. It's really nice, and I've done like more. Actually, I guess I will go to Facebook. I've done a couple, I guess just one bigger illustration in that using that brush, but a lot of times it's whatever look I'm going for. That's the brush I'm going to use. Let me show you a few things here. Actually, yeah. This is the one I did the other day with that brush, but this one I did first drawing with that drawing brush, and then you can see, let's see here. How come this is not high resolution? So you can see, like, I used a little, oh, that's another really good brush. There's a little scatter brush that I use a lot for little speckly things. It's right here. So you can just get a nice, like, speckly pattern, and when I'm painting in perspective, I'll just flatten it out. Or actually, I think I might have one already made. No? Nope. Okay, so I flatten it out, but then I need to turn off rotation, angle jitter, so that it's flat, and then I'll get like, I can keep it like if it's on the ground plane or something. But I did like these little speckly things with that brush. I painted this tree with the, if you look really closely, you can see it's actually that little leaf brush, really small. And then the leaf brush is used right here. I drew in a lot of this kind of foliage stuff with that pencil, just with color. Yeah, that's pretty much all I used on this one, with some of this guy for some nice gritty texture. But a lot of my work, I try to like silhouette stuff and then put like a little bit of texture in there, and that helps. You know, that's just shape making with random texture in there that helps fill in space, right?
Very nice. That's a nice illustration. Was that for a project or something?
This one? Yeah, this was for some kind of web game that I did for someone. Um, this one I used pretty much just that chalk texture and then a square brush for these little areas. But I mean, this is all just that chalk brush and color picking. Sometimes I'll set the chalk brush, because the chalk brush is this, oops, is this one, these two. This one has shape dynamics on it, this one doesn't. And it's at full opacity. So, you know, as I'm painting, if I need it to be less opacity, I'll just go up here and take it down a little bit and, you know, kind of blend it manually. And that's one way. That's actually a pretty good way of working, but typically.
Don't you lose I find when I work with opaque brushes or semi-transparent brushes over opaque that it loses all any sort of graininess or noise because it's.
Yeah, because you're really lightly putting it on there, so it starts to soften it a lot. So you have to be aware of that.
I suppose you get the same net result if you used a semi-transparent brush, though, right?
Yes, the same. And that's why a lot of times you can get like a lot of muddier colors and stuff like that, because it's just kind of blending together and then softening it all together, so you just kind of get this amorphous kind of feel to what's going on there. And that's why I like to use opaque brushes, because that puts it down the way you need it, and then you can go in with some noise and just kind of break it up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover with custom brushes. This is a cool cloud one. You guys have any more questions?
Yeah, I do. I was kind of wondering more from a good practice perspective
Uh-huh.
using brushes, because one of the challenges I've always had with breaking into using Photoshop for painting is that you can literally almost do anything you want, and sometimes having that much freedom makes it hard to focus on, you know, on what you're really trying to get done. And so from a brushes perspective, kind of like what you alluded to in the one painting that you drew, but just using like one or two brushes that were very similar, and then just varying the details of that one brush.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any like good tips on, you know, like try and limit yourself to like a certain number of brushes or?
Well, I know one guy that I follow on Facebook who does these. He doesn't do them all the time, but he was doing these. He was doing these studies where he would just use a round brush for the whole painting. And you do learn some from that. I just don't really like changing brushes that much, so I kind of use as few brushes as I can, just because I'm lazy, and it takes time to set them up to be exactly how you want. So either I'll take that time and set one up for a particular piece for what I need it to do, and then keep it around later, I guess, if I need it. I'll take that time to set one up, or I'll just use a few brushes that I already have that I know would work.
I suppose you amass a library like you're showing us a cloud brush. What are the chances that whenever you have to paint clouds, you probably start with this brush?
Really high.
Whenever you have to paint forest, you start with this brush.
Yeah, I mean, I've got those leaf brushes.
And the little flowers on your illustration, you use the third brush from the top.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I have like so many here, is because they kind of cover a lot of different things that I might need, and so I just go back to them. And every now and then I'll be dissatisfied with how it's working, so I'll make a new one or make tweaks to it. But what you do need to know is whenever you make changes to a brush, you have to save it as a new brush. Because whenever you go back to a brush, it goes to the settings that you had on it when you saved it.
Give you a warning dialog?
No, none at all. Yeah, if you click off of the brush, like I made, if I made any changes to this, and I go to a different brush, and then I go back, it'll be back how it was when I saved it, which is kind of annoying, honestly. And there's a way to get around that, but I'm going to go over that a different time. We don't really have time right now, and that's under tools. You can save tools and tool settings, tool presets.
Do you have a recommendation list of a basic set of brushes that should basically be in just about every palette?
Well, yeah, these up here. So basically, these are round and like square or chalky marker kind of tips. I use a square one a lot when I'm doing buildings or anything urban, because it's like super easy to just put anything down and have it feel industrial and man-made, because it's just got right angles in it, you know, everywhere. But you got your basic round one without, you know, any kind of size change, and then one that's pressure sensitive with size, opacity, both opacity and size, pressure sensitive, and then you've got your soft round. Then I've got like a harder kind of, I guess you would call it a square or chisel tip, and these have opacity on them. And then this one I used to use for drawing all the time, but I don't as much anymore. It's just got a little bit of waviness to it. But I'd say these ones plus like a chalky or something with like a nice noisy texture to it, you're gonna want. And beyond that, you can make custom ones to do different things like the leaf or the trees, or you know, something with noise is almost always wanted though. Yeah, there you go. Custom brushes. If you have any questions, you can email me, and I'll also have my other things on here, on the network, so you can download the brushes and stuff like that.
The brush set you have here, you'll make available?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, send a reply to the meeting with the location.
Okay, I'll send that out.
Thank you, Matt.
Sure.